New York City. Another week has passed. Another chapter has been written. The Nets looked a little bit shaky. The Nets had a little bit of intrigue happening behind the scenes. But me and Bam, we're here to talk about it. Let's go. Bam, I don't know how I feel about this past week of Brooklyn Nets ishness.
It was a weird week. I mean, it's every week there's a new storyline. Someone's coming and going, and that's just the way it's been all year. This isn't a normal season, but here we are. But they win 2 out of 3 this week, so
isn't it
just
more
is
like
what
two
it
out
is.
of? Isn't it more like 2 out of 4 though?
I guess, yeah, because the Laker game was Saturday.
Yeah.
Right. That game feels like it was 3 weeks ago. It's like, Jesus.
It feels like it was 3 weeks ago, and we're dwelling on it.
Yeah. I wasn't too upset about that. I mean, they laid an egg. And I don't, obviously, if they played that Laker team 10 times, they'd probably win 9.
Yeah.
That was the one night where it didn't happen. And look, you saw it last night. This team doesn't come out a lot of nights, locked in, and the starting 5 is bad defensively. And if the other team comes out shooting the ball well, they're going to get good looks. And we'll talk about it. I actually have some suggestions, and I want to switch the lineup up. But we can get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, no, I think the Laker game was telling in that it's important to know that this team doesn't give a fuck right now. Like they have so much talent and so much ability that they want to win. But I even was watching the game where it's like I'm like, why isn't Nash putting? They're down 3. Why isn't Nash putting Kyrie back in the game?
Yeah, so look no further than that situation there in Philly, and you had half of Nets Twitter cussing the guy up and down. Half of it doesn't care about the regular season and the standings, and the Nets seem to side there. I mean, they're showing you that their only focus is getting to the playoffs healthy. Right. Kyrie's a young man. He could have went back in that game. I mean, give me a break. But for whatever reason, they're just
he hadn't
forget
played
it.
The previous couple games, so.
Yeah, I mean, come on. This is a world-class athlete. I mean, I understand he was sitting for like 20 minutes, but come on. I mean, he couldn't go back in the game.
and those guys was tired. Like, that wasn't an easy 21, comeback. That was like,
yeah,
they were spent, and so were the Sixers. I felt like if they threw Kyrie back in, they could have done something, but I guess the big picture is that the Nets don't give a fuck. It's like Nash said it himself. They asked Nash, when do you guys think you're going to be fully healthy? And he said, I don't think we're going to be fully healthy until the playoffs.
It's possible because even if they get Harden back towards the end of next week, these guys aren't all going to play on back-to-back. So they may have like 6 or 7 games at full capacity, but any back-to-back, someone's going to be sitting. Yeah. Whether it's Durant, whether it's Irving, or maybe they sit one guy in the front end. I think they just like, look, we know we can beat anybody. They'll almost use the first round as like a tune-up for their rotations because they'll just out-talent their first-round opponent.
I think, but let's talk about that. Let's talk about that while you're there, right? The first-round opponent is not going to be a joke. Like, who have they got in the bottom there? It's
right now, it's Miami. Right now, they would be playing Miami if the playoffs started today.
That's like a cold slap of like water being doused with water to change from the way they're playing. Miami will beat you.
I mean, I feel like that's like a hard 5 or 6 games, but that's okay. Like it's okay if they have like a tough first round. The Kid Martin teams, The first series was against Indiana, who was a very
Yeah.
live in game, 8th seed.
Oh, I'll
Took
never
them to the
forget.
tilt.
I'll never forget Kenyon locking up who was
Jermaine O'Neal, yeah.
Jamel O'Neal. Oh my God, taking his manhood. That was embarrassing.
But that was a tough series. They lost game 1. They had to win a double or triple overtime game 5 to advance. But it kind of like it kind of had them grow as a battle tested team together. So they just can't look. It's hard for me to get worked up for it because I know they don't care. And look, they're 20 games over 500, and people are like, they're not taking the regular season seriously. Yeah. Well, what would they be doing if they were taking it seriously? Then? Is it like, what's the flip side? So they'd be 30 games over 500?
I mean, if Harden is playing, it's not so much about Kyrie or KD. KD's not in the lineup enough, and we're all on eggshells when we're watching KD play.
Dude, he hits the deck way too often.
Oh, it's so scary. And but when we watch Harden, it's a completely different thing. He just imposes his will.
Yeah, he's a ball.
So it's such a different thing.
The reality is, they're not the 1 seed because they started 14 and 12. Since that point, I don't believe they've lost 2 games in a row since that point.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last 2-game losing streak. So they basically win like 3 out of every 4. Correct. 4 out of every 5. Then they have like a couple games that they just have punted on. So it's just like it just is what it is at this point. Like I just want to get to the playoffs and go from there.
I'm so sick of just seeing like fans of other teams that have meaningless like the things they're doing is so meaningless and now being where we are. Like conceiving what we're playing for right now. All the other stuff just doesn't matter. Like, are we above 500? Where are playoff seedings? Who's a superstar or not? Remember when we used to argue over who had the potentiality to be a superstar? Nonsense. This team, the conversation should only be about will we or will we not win the championship? And
that's it. They have to at minimum get there.
So that kind of brings me to a bridging part of that conversation where it's like, okay, LaMarcus Aldridge, he retires, fine, no problem, right? But still, if you pick LaMarcus Aldridge and you could have signed DeAndre Jordan, you have to be judged on that. And I think the only thing that makes anything right, and none of this matters. All of this talk does not matter if they win a championship. And I think that's the litmus test is, are you lifting Larry O'Brien? Because it doesn't get easier next year. And
no, what's going to happen is you're going to see probably a new team form somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The Lakers will add. The Clippers will add. All these teams are going to try to. If you're the team that wins, usually you're going to make some tweaks, but you're going to come back with what you have. Everyone else is going to say we need to make a drastic move to catch you.
Right.
Philly could get a 3rd star.
Right.
The Bucks could get another star. Who knows? Miami can get another star. So
someone can get injured. Right.
Right. Of course.
It's. This year, I love what they're doing even though it's frustrating, even though I hate losing and I just want to slap some of these teams every night. I enjoy it so much. I love it. But I know what the big picture is. I know that I couldn't care less about any of these games if it would cause us to not have James Harden against the Lakers. So I'm good with it. I'm great with it. But I don't want anyone in our fan base to lose sight of what the only proper outcome should be, and every effort that Sean Marks makes should be moving this team towards that, is winning the championship. This team does not win a championship, it is a failure. And that's my take on it. I'd love to hear your take on it.
Well, it's hard to. You have to look at it like this: like if they lost this year and then won 2 straight, it's not a failure.
No.
You have to look at the era in its totality. The thing is, losing this year puts this thing in a situation where it could be a very short-lived stay here, because it puts a lot of pressure on next season. If they were to not win that year,
Right.
these guys are only going to get older,
Yep.
right?
And
Harden's
more
going to say,
fragile.
"Fuck this! I'm going to go team up with LeBron somewhere or something."
Yep.
So it becomes it puts you on life support. So getting the first this is crazy to say. It's like getting the first one out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your first kiss, like just get it over with.
Yeah.
It is important.
No, my message to Sean Marks is don't fuck around, because
he's
a
not.
lot of
Dude.
people
I mean,
say
he does everything he can.
No. I listen. It's the results that matter to me, and Sean Marks has made his choices. I love him. I support him. I was like, yes, LaMarcus Aldridge, I see what you're trying to do. And but at the same time, if the Lakers get us in 7 and just win by beating the living daylights out of us with the gigantic front court that they have, which we just saw them kind of do without the other two, choices were made, and you got to be judged on those choices. And the only thing that makes everything right for me is a championship. So,
yeah, look, that's the goal, obviously. And to get there, I think I want to switch the start lineup up.
So that's what I was going to say. Now that LaMarcus Aldridge is gone, take us somewhere. How do we line up this team now?
We know the 3 guys are going to start, right? We know Harden, Irving, and Durant are starting.
Mm-hmm.
When we want to play big, I would start Green and Alize Johnson.
Wow.
And I would play him as my 5. I let him play undersized, but he's quick. He can front guys. You can switch 3, 4, 5. He doesn't need the ball. He'll get dirty buckets. He'll do a lot of what Bruce Brown does, but at a bigger height. He's a better rebounder and do things like that. When we want to go smaller, it would be the same lineup, but I would take out him and I would insert Shamet.
Okay.
Why? For defense.
So I agree. I would love to see something like that.
Starting 5 sucks on defense.
It's
just
they
terrible.
Get punished. They get punished, and it's not because Harden is missing. If Harden was there, it might be worse. The problem is I don't think Nash can play Alize like that. Like I see him going to TLC more, which has been a failure.
I'm suggesting to play him as my 5, basically, in a rotation.
Alize as the 5?
Why not? Why not?
That's provocative.
Why not? Why can't he guard? So first off, the Nets switch everything anyway. But who's a better matchup for Bam Adebayo, him or DeAndre?
I would say Nick Claxton.
Well, Claxton's not. He's not going to start, right? We know he's going to come off the bench, and I think they're going to want to keep him and Griffin together in that backup unit, right? So I want to keep that. What I want to do is use Johnson as my bridge player to the backups, but he'll start every game with energy. He wants it, right? He has something to prove.
Mm-hmm.
All we're going to ask him is go out there, bang. I don't care if you get in foul trouble.
He fights everybody for rebounds, which is hilarious.
Right. He was muscling with a guy like Embiid, right? Yeah. So maybe not Embiid, but like if we're playing Miami, I'd much rather him in the chest of a guy like Adebayo than Claxton's going to get physically pushed around.
Yeah. And
Jordan can't go out and guard him. And I really don't want to put Jeff Green on him there. So I'm not saying he's going to be the kind of guy that starts and plays 30 minutes. But he could be a starter that he starts each half, and that's it. You don't see him again the rest of the half. But he's just like kind of like a tone setter for the team, and it doesn't disrupt the other pieces in the roles that they've been in.
So for me, he's a clear difference maker. Like None of this stuff is an anomaly. It's just professional coaches